Main musical influences as a teenager in the 70s, the most striking that I remember, my first band I ever remember was the Hollies, and it was when the Hollies had obviously grown their hair long and gone a bit psychedelic, and I was sat in my auntie's house with my elder cousins, Marie and Colette, Top of the Pops on every night Thursday, and there must have been very little, you know, and I'm watching it, and I remember thinking, God, they look great. Absolutely. So it was obviously the look of them first, and then I don't even remember what the song was. And then the girls making some reference to, oh, I don't like them anymore. They've gone all druggy type thing, you know, which has really stuck in my mind for some reason. But I think the biggest influences in the 70s would have been the Stones and T-Rex and glam rock and all this kind of malarkey. When I was a young lad, 10, 11, 12. So 71, 72. But then as a teenager, properly into music would have been my older brothers, ELP, Trilogy, and Yes, and Hawkwind, and these were the bands that I felt deeply in love with, and would carry their albums to school just so that everybody knew I was listening to Trilogy by ELP, or, you know, Hall of the Mountain Grill by Hawkwind, or, you know, and I still love them to this day. I mean, my car is absolutely jam-packed with prog rock at the moment for some reason.
Well, the 70s was a great time for me growing up because I'm the youngest of a big family. You know, including my parents, there's like 10 of us, and I'm the youngest. So it was all Stevie Wonder, you know, and Bread, and Beatles, the Carpenters. It was mainly songwriters and all that. So when I started, you know, into the 70s, I got, you know, my own personality, and like Bowie and Steely Dan and all. It were quite different genres, really. Never really got too much into the punk scene, the actual punk scene, but like the new, I like Magazine, Manchester groups and that kind of stuff. I kind of like that. But it was a good, I was, you know, based around song, so it was all Stevie Wonder, the greats, really.
My most influential book as a teenager would be not a book at all. It was comics. It was the Beano and the Dandy and stuff like that, and we got it delivered, you know, not every week, but every now and then. And I would have it under my pillow and I would read it thoroughly, time again and again and again. And the only book I tried to read as a teenager was Christmas Carol. And that was because I'd seen Alistair Sim in the film version of it, and just thought, and looked forward to it coming every Christmas, you know. So I remember seeing the Dickens book. In fact, I think I stole the Dickens book from my junior school, just because I liked the film so much and I wanted to try and read the book. But no, reading was difficult for me. Had to be pictures.
It was newspaper stuff. Like I never really started getting into books until, you know, the latter stages of school and that. And then it was kind of like, then they became like political books, like E.R. Braithwaite and, you know, that kind of stuff. And but I wasn't a great book reader. I was more, you know, current affairs and news items and that kind of stuff. Comics and, you know, all that. Yeah, until I was about 14, 15 was when I started getting into, you know, books, really. I was much later in life for that.
I decided to do music full time. Was not really was the conscious decision to do it full time was made sort of 15, 16. I actually had my first guitar bought for my 12th birthday. I stopped playing it by, you know, 2 months after my 12th birthday because I joined a little band. We were practicing in the local labour club. I couldn't do a bar chord, bin the guitar. I couldn't do, you know, knock on wood, all these kind of songs, you know, that you were having to do at the time. And then I think the real conscious decision was sort of 15, 16. I knew I didn't want to work. I'd gone to a gig, you know, at one of the local gigs, and I saw a band doing Hawkwind cover. I played a bit of guitar, I saw the bass play, and I sort of sussed I could do a bit of that.
I decided to go into music because I was really, really passionate about it. I love songs, I love melody, I love tunes, I love simplicity in songs, I love the atmosphere when people play together. I like that you can sit down by yourself and do it on an acoustic guitar. And it was the main reason. The main reason for music is that I'm passionate about it. Completely.
I first met Ed, and my first impressions. I first met him when I was about 13, 14, in St Kevin's School in Kirby. I was sort of in the lower middle set, so we weren't dumbass, but we weren't bright. And Ed got lowered down into our class, and I was one of the kids who sat at the back and didn't comprehend anything that was going on, other than you're meant to have a laugh during the day, you know, and that was my job in the class, was to, you know, relieve for everyone a bit of a laugh. And Ed got lowered down, and you could tell straight away he had a thing about him, you know, where, you know, I'm a bit brighter than, you know, I can hack all this work, but I also want to have a laugh as well. And then obviously, I think I was drawn to the fact that he was very musical as well, just at the time when I was like really falling in love with bands kind of thing. But with Ed, it was all Bowie, and it was strictly, I think, almost all Bowie, which to me was like, no, that's the guy with the orange hair, and he's on Top of the Pops, and all that. That's just not cool. Why do you like him? That's just not cool. And then just that thing, I knew he liked that kind of banter where, as teenage lads, one of the favourite things you can actually do as a teenage lad is just slag off your mate's favourite band, until eventually they grab you and try and squeeze the living daylights out of you and try and get you to confess to actually liking Bowie. And this would be the thing with Ed, you know, all right, I like him. And then as soon as you were let go, you would run away, and Bowie, shit, he's crap. And then obviously 77, Ed got us, because he knew I was into ELP and he knew I was into electronic music, he passed me Low, Bowie's Low album, that Bowie had done with Eno, and suddenly that ambient music, I sort of went, that is amazing, that's the kind of music I'd love to make, really. And that was it then. It changed my whole thing, actually, because then I suddenly went new wave, and you know, the old bands went into the background, really.
I first met Gary at school in Kirby. It was an all-boys school called St Kevin's, and it was, I think there was about 2,200 all-boys, Roman Catholic school, and he had similar interests to what I did. You know, we were kind of like, we went on the sporty side of things that went on in the school. We were always, you know, when you're in school, there's like groups of people, some like sports, some like football, some like cricket, rugby. I think our connection was music, really. And we were kind of in opposite camps, actually, when we were younger. He was more progressive rock, you know. He liked his ELP and Yes and that, and I was into Bowie and, you know, more off the wall stuff. But there was a good connection, and that's where we met.
The name China Crisis came from just lads, our friends. What me and Ed would do is we'd be in his mother's house, or on occasion in my mum's house, with our little 4-track Porter studio and our little guitar and little keyboard from the Freeman's catalogue or whatever it was. And what we'd do is we'd work up until 9:30, 10 o'clock, and then we'd jump down the boozer that was a couple of doors down. And all the lads would be in there, you know, and we'd sort of stay for the last half an hour. Like £1.50, you know, you could get 2 drinks and fags and chips and blah, blah. And we were just sat around the table, I think, when we were about 17, 18. And the reason, we don't know who actually put the two words together, because it was all crisis in Russia, China, this, and because all the Cold War type thing was still very happening then, you know. And somebody just put them together and they sounded right. I've never liked the name. I still don't like it to this day. And I love words now. I absolutely love them. You know, I mean, they're just so juicy fresh to me now, and I love the buoyancy of them. It's so angular. I would never dream in a million words of using it. But it's just so mad, isn't it? The way names stick, you know, and that's it really.
We actually had a friend called Mike Douglas. He went on to play with the Human League and everything. And he was a close friend of ours. And we were kind of like interested in, because what I was saying before, in like newsworthy items and that, we were interested in the East. And everything was like Japan this, China that, and Russia this. And I do remember a couple of the names actually that got, you know, bandied around on the night, and it was like Russia in winter, China in, you know, summer or whatever. And then I think it was Mick Douglas, the lad who went on to join the Human League. He actually put China Crisis together, and we all went, it's got a ring about him. We kept it ever since. And it was in a local pub in Kirby in Liverpool.
The first song I ever wrote, I think I wrote when I was about 16, 17. And it was to a Simple Minds song, actually. So I think Simple Minds had a song called Life in a Day from their Reel to Reel album or something like that. And I'd seen Simple Minds with magazine, Brady's or Eric's or something like that in town in Liverpool. And I loved Magazine. Magazine were the band. Howard Devoto was the vocalist, genius vocalist, amazing band. Barry Adamson was the guy that inspired me the most on bass guitar. John McGeoch on electric guitar. They were Dave on keyboards. They were just melt in the fucking mouth, brilliance. And anyway, Simple Minds were supporting, and it was when Jim was into all his black hair and dark eyes and white thing, and I'm sure they had a song Life in a Day. And what happened was I had the tune in my head, so I sort of come up with words for that tune, but then somehow applied it to what I was messing about with on the instrument. And I don't remember the name of it, and I don't think I've got a copy, or I don't know what it was, but I know it was to that Simple Minds tune.
Me and Gary actually started a group playing with like cabaret people, and we were terrible at it. We were awful at it. We couldn't, you know, they'd play Eagles songs and Thin Lizzy songs and that, and we were never very good at it. And then we just started writing songs together, but we used to do a lot of instrumentals. So it was probably an instrumental that I did before we actually started getting to the full-blown song.
So what was the first song that you and Gary wrote together? Can you remember that?
No, can't remember it. I remember the session we did. I think it was one day. You know, like some groups have. I've heard the Eagles say it actually, where they did something like Desperado and you know, another great classic that they wrote in one day. I do know that one day we got together and we were recording and writing, and I think we wrote African and White and Christy in the same day. So I do believe, you know, that you do have them magic moments where just magic happens, and that was a great day. I do remember that now.
The Red Wedge movement, I wish we'd been more politicised really. We started off, we were brought up working class. All our first albums were, you know, first couple of albums were Working with Fire and Steel and Are We a Worker and Red Sails and African and White. And Christian was originally about the First World War, or my impressions of it, what I'd seen on TV and stuff. And I wish we'd sort of got more sort of, you see, I left school basically at 14, so I didn't really have a clue about history of our country or anything. All I knew was my background really, and my local sort of area. And when the politics happened, Red Wedge and the miners thing, stuff like that, we really had a couple of hit records by then, 2 or 3 hit albums. We were in America or we were somewhere else, you know, and we sort of missed quite a bit of it.
We started becoming like pop stars, for want of a better word, at that time. And probably through no fault of our own. And that we started distancing ourselves more from it. We were brought up more political and African and white and working with fire and steel, and by the time the movement was up and going, we were onto songs like Wishful Thinking and hitting the charts and touring the world, and we kind of got detached, which is sad because I mean it's still, you know, it's very central to what we did.
My big regret about Live Aid, Bob Geldof, is that we never even tried for Live Aid, the first one. And I think he's amazing, actually. I think the way people feel so warmly about him is a great achievement, really. He's obviously endured a lot of personal, tragic stuff. And to be a dad, and he obviously loves his children very much. And he's very vocal about these kind of things. I think that's great, really, you know, because he's obviously a bit of rock and roll as well. He's obviously that little thing. And I love his, you know, he's obviously got some of that working class kind of at Live Aid, you know, I'm sorry, but I've got to sing this song, you know, I don't like Mondays. My girlfriend actually was a mad Boomtown Rats fan, you know, and I think that was the first gig she ever went to, or the second. Maybe Gilbert O'Sullivan was the first.
We were very lucky. We were at Virgin Records, and they were very maverick in the way they were set up and the way Richard Branson and Simon Draper, I think, was second to none. And I know that people might hate me saying this because they think of as some, you know, billionaire entrepreneur, but I tell you what, his soul and everything and the chances, he gave us the biggest break of our life. And I can't knock that. And on a more personal point, I still get my royalties every time they're supposed to be paid off Virgin. And the smaller independent, so-called trendy labels that you're supposed to be with, who we've done deals with, I haven't seen a carrot from. So who's ripping you off? I have good feelings about Virgin Records. We spent a long time with them, and there's very much, I think Branson got it right. I think Simon Draper got it right. It was an independent company, brought up from grassroots, honest, loyal to the people who they had on it, stuck with them. I mean, we were with them for God knows how many years, 12 years, 13, stuck with us and everything. And I haven't got any, do you know what? You said your good points and your bad points. I haven't really got any bad points. Because we were getting older, you know, we had to leave the company at some stage and let new blood come through. That's not a bad thing, that's a good thing, you know. And they stuck with us, they were loyal. I've got good memories of being with, you know, a major label. I've got bad memories of being with independent labels.
The best thing about being with a major record label for me would be the very fact that it was Virgin Records. I mean, this was Mike Oldfield, Tubular Bells, the Human League, a magazine, and they wanted to sign us. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Could not have wished for. And Simon Draper was still to this day in my memory a sweetheart, an absolute sweetheart. And he was the MD of the company. We didn't realise it at the time. We just thought he's great, isn't he? Isn't he great? I love him. He loves us. And everything we played him, he was really supportive. And we'd have like a top 10 single and go in, and they'd be going, right, we've got to go with this track, we've got to go with this track. And we'd be like, no, not the ballads, you know, we've got to have something, you know, a bit more rock. We've been touring with the Mines and playing with the Police and everyone, you know, we wanted something upbeat. And, you know, it was fantastic. Virgin at Vernon Yard was brilliant. When we joined, I think there was 14 bands on the label. Everybody knew each other, they could shout to each other from them. When we left in 89, 90, I think they had 165 acts on the label or something. And so many departments and so many rooms, and they were buying airplanes and trains and everything. And we just got lost in it and poorly advised and stuff like that, really, because we didn't have to leave, really, but we were so sort of, I think we were just a bit hurt and a bit, you know, badly managed, I suppose, at the time.
Steely Dan with the group that we were listening to at the time and all that kind of stuff. And we went out for lunch or whatever, you know, with the record company. And it was me actually. I turned around at the table and they were talking about the next album. Who do you want to work with? Where are you going? What do you? And we actually asked for a guy called Michael O'Martin, who played piano with Steely Dan, or Gary Katz and that. And the guy, I think it was Lenny Ronca from Warner Brothers, who we were speaking to, he went, oh, right. You know, you could see him like clockwork was ticking away. And he went, oh, we might be able to do something there. And then the next thing we know, we were back in Britain, and we got a phone call, and they said, we might be able to do something better than that. You know, Walter wants to come out of semi-retirement or whatever they were going through, and he'd be interested, and we met him, and it was great. You know, it was.
I think we jokingly said, or Ed jokingly said, Gary Katz. Because although I was aware of Steely Dan, I didn't know who Gary Katz was, you know. I mean, I thought Asia was brilliant, I thought Gaucho was brilliant, and Royal Scam and all this. But, you know, when you're that young, you're not in awe of anyone, you know. It's like, you know, a lot of it, I'm just trying to have a laugh. And then, lo and behold, they jokingly said, well, Walter is on their books for some reason. I don't know what he was doing at Warner Brothers. And it turned out that Walter had actually heard working with Brian Steele and absolutely loved it. And was very interested to meet us to do the next album. So then it all got a little bit, you know, he's coming over to Britain to meet us. This is 85, 86. And I still wasn't really in awe of him because I was, you know, I was really enjoying it. I was stoned a hell of a lot of the time and thoroughly enjoying my time being in a band. And I loved the people in the band that I was in. So when Walter turned up, you know, in his little vegan kind of, you know, little did I know he was sort of rehabilitating himself from his excesses kind of thing, and working with us was part of his new regime, and coming to Britain to work with us, that it turned out great actually. I was always very flattered actually. Walter said the most flattering thing actually, because when we played in the demos, they were just little 4-track things with no vocals, and you'd play in the demo and sing the vocal tune. And he thought he thought Ed and myself wrote a lot like the Beatles, he thought. Now, I don't know if that's just because we were Scousers. We're going, Walter, what's this break doing? What are we doing in this? But he was the most generous of producers, absolutely the most generous of producers. King and the Catholic Style, the actual riff on King and the Catholic Style, Walter came up with that. Walter took the demo away and worked on them and came back. We had the bass line. I came up with the bass line. But he was one of those. I've always found actually the most gifted of people are usually the most generous. They're the ones who, you know, oh, I don't really care really. You know, do you know what I mean? Whatever. My happiest memory of the Glass Spider tour with David Bowie was one. Being at the gig with him was enough, really, and I think the opening scene where, you know, the spider actually lights up and David descends or something, and then I think seeing Peter Frampton, I just, you know, he was not a big icon, but his song, you know, that big 70s song he had, and then you would hear, you know, Peter Frampton, and you'd be like, yeah, well, what? And then he was on stage with Carlos Alomar, and it was like tremendous. It was lovely, absolutely lovely.
We played with David Bowie on the Glass Spider tour, but there was a lead up to this. We were working with a guy called Clive Langer. Clive Langer and Alan Winstanley produced an album for us, and they just took it, I think it was Absolute Beginners or something, the film. They're doing the soundtrack. So Clive was very friendly with Bowie and all that because he did the song. And Bowie come to the studio where we were recording, and everything, you know, we all got on famously, and that was quite good and everything. And then it seemed to go quiet or whatever. He went away, we carried on recording. And then we got the offer to do the Glass Spider tour, which we took. we went out to Germany and played with him. And it was, for me personally, he was the ultimate hero for me, you know. I love the guy, he's a musical genius. But I think we caught him at the lowest ebb in his career. And I'd seen Bowie when I was a kid. I hitchhiked to Birmingham, you know, and to the Earl's Court to see, I think it was Station to Station or whatever it was with the tubes and, you know, all the glass tube lighting and all that kind of stuff. And it was brilliant. And then to go and see him and play with him on the glass spider thing, I got kind of disillusioned by it. I thought, you know, you should never see your heroes in that light. You want them to stay heroes. And it wasn't a good thing for me to do because he wasn't at the top of his form. But you know, what everyone goes through, them peaks and troughs, and nevertheless he is a genius. But I wish I would have played on. I wish I was a lot older at the time. Would have done the Station to Station tour or something like that. But the Glass Spider tour with Peter Frampton, and it just wasn't for me.
My happiest memory of Kevin Wilkinson. Now, number one, there's just too many of them. But I think oh God, I will have to think about this really. My happiest memory of Kevin. There's too many. I think the Swindon Boogie is one of them. My definite happiest memory of Kevin is we're touring with Carlos Santana. We've just played Red Rocks. We all come off the stage. We get on the bus. We're on a sleeper bus. My brother's in the crew. Ed's brother's in the crew. This is how mad Kevin was. For some reason, we're chundering down the road through the desert, through the Arizona desert, Boulder, Colorado, and for some reason we all ended up bollock naked, dancing to the Stones' greatest hits. And that was the kind of guy Kevin was. Things just happened, and you know, I hadn't been bollock naked with my younger brother since we were 8 and 9 year olds and were in the bath together as little kids, and that's the kind of crazy kind of world he occupied.
It's hard to like treat him as a memory for me because he still, you know, I still think about him quite regularly, and our birthdays were 2 days apart. Mine was the 9th of June, this was the 11th of June, and every time, you know, it comes to that time, I'm always thinking about him, and he should be here. But Kevin was like, he was like a fast car in life, if you know what I mean. He did everything within, I think Kevin had a get out clause in his life. If there was a contract written, Kevin had a get out clause where he'd achieve everything he wanted to achieve in a short space of time, and then he's out of here, you know. But all the memories of Kevin were good because he was very hippyish in his attitude. You couldn't argue with Kevin. If you were irate and started arguing, you'd walk away from it, and it'd make you more irate because he wouldn't rise to the bait. He was a very placid and a great musician, absolutely fantastic musician. And you know, for someone who thinks that he's just a drummer, he was much more than that. He played other instruments, he was integral on arrangements, and there was much more about him than that. And a pleasure to work with.
Great.
That's Kevin.
Thank you very much.
You should have got that. That's Kevin on the phone.
Okay.
Okay.
Just from one to the hills.
We got a set order. We haven't really, but
We have to decide it now.
yeah, we'll do that in a minute. Singing, and you start with singing.
Okay, go.
Ready?
Those are pure chongo moments.
It starts when I get the nod off you.
Tell you what, you nod him, then he can nod you. We do like a circle thing.
And we can nod all together. I'm nod man.
It'd be like domino rallies. Go on.
It won't you?
the session, we put them all the way through. We keep playing on that on the way through.
It's quite nice actually.